Good morning. Good to have a little time together this morning. I appreciate you tuning in. I do want to warn some of you. I'm being counseled by my tech people and those that are involved in the various things we do online like this. I'm being advised to shift away from video to just an audio, and they call that a podcast. And so anyway, I'm not sure when that transition is going to take place, but if you're not real comfortable finding a podcast or knowing what to do, let me or one of our folks on our staff know. I'm kind of fond of this. I think you can get to our YouTube channel without all the junk in the world, where if you go to podcasts, all these other podcasts pop up. And I don't like seeing junk. I don't like being tempted to, I wonder what this guy says, or I wonder what they think. And that's the draw. And so I just encourage you, the idea of drifting and just clicking on whatever, to me, this is a world filled with junk and crude and everything imaginable and slanderous and critical. And I don't like that. I don't want to hear that from anybody about anybody. The Bible talks about the scorner as an abomination to men, and the Proverbs filled with verses on scornfulness. But anyway, so if a change is going to take place, you'll get a little warning. This is a precursor. This is an early warning. There may be some switching going on, and some people have said they don't mind one way or another. And one of our guys that's pretty sharp in this, he said that there's different audiences. He said, I think you ought to do both. I thought, well, I'm not trying to add to my life. I'm trying to streamline and get a little bit more done, not get more jobs on my plate. But anyway, so there may be a few things that will modify along the way, and hope you'll be patient and happy to hear from you about what works or doesn't work for you, because we have people in different areas, and it's not all just our church members who watch our church services or the YouTube or whatever. Main thing is keep your heart. Proverbs 4:23, keep thy heart with all diligence. Guard what gets in your head, and guard who gets your ear. And I've never been in a time in my life the last few years when I've seen so much just outright blatant lies. And from Washington to Wildomar, just from, the just people with no conscience and so willing. And it shouldn't surprise me. You read the Bible and they lied about Jesus and Paul. And so why would we be surprised if they lie about God's people, or they lie about a president or whatever? And that corrupt crowd in Washington, D.C., wow, what a sewer. It's not a swamp, it's a sewer. It's much darker and much more polluted than most people would realize, I'm sure. But I love the fact that I serve the King, and I don't have to fret on the sewer or the swamp, and I can commit them to God and pray for my leaders. We're going to be over in the book of Proverbs and several verses, 1 Timothy as well. But I wanted to read you a quick verse and just a quick blessing. Maybe you're aware of this, but a week and a half ago on Wednesday night, Adam Servine and Caleb Patton were ordained, and they were ordained at Bible College, which I'm fine with that, and both of them taking positions in the ministry. Our daughter-in-law, they graduated from college at Commonwealth Baptist, Pastor Jeff Fugett's church, and then our daughter-in-law, she marched at Santa Clara, Brother Treber's school, and of course she and Josiah got married about 5 months ago, and so just a couple weeks ago, Ruth Ann marched across the platform, outdoor graduation, and that was fine. And then on Sunday night, Josiah was ordained, and the two of them are headed off into the ministry, working with Kevin and Loretta Walker, and traveling with the ministry there, the revival meetings they're running, and then they'll be getting somewhere in the fall, sometime, if the Lord leads as he is right now. Obviously, God moves things, but right now the plan is for them to work their way into deputation, raising support to go to the mission field, looks like right now, Trinidad. And that's great. And along the same time, others of our young people are finishing up college, and some are out on deputation, like Nathan Patton is. He's raising his support to go to the Philippines, and we're so blessed. And if it wasn't God blessing us, we wouldn't see these things going on. And God's been awfully good to us, and let's keep thanking Him, praising Him for how good He's been. And then here locally, we've had people getting saved and baptized, of course, visitors in church. Wayne Record and I were out soul winning Saturday and had a couple in church Sunday that we met the wife Saturday out just visiting people. And anyway, God's been so very good. We had a couple visits Sunday morning who came as a result of someone meeting them through like offer up, just things you sell in the neighborhood. And it was a family just moved here looking for a church like ours. They said, "Oh, we like that you use a hymnal and no rock music." But anyway, thank the Lord for His blessings. He's been so good to us. And I do hope you'll pray for our country, and then pray for churches, plural. Pray for the gospel preaching churches across the country, a lot of awkwardness. And then pray for our church, that God would bless and prosper us. I want to see God do great things. And we have a wonderful God. Let's guard our heart. Our job is not to be slanderous and critical and ugly toward anybody, whether it be the political leaders or whatever else. Up in Canada right now, I was told there's 3 Baptist preachers in jail over holding services against the rules of their province, and I think it's province they call them there. And you just think, what a mess, and this the pressures that are going to be on people with the vaccinations. How many areas are they going to get? Have you ever heard of a time when whether you got a vaccine or not got you into Dodger Stadium or Angels Stadium with a discounted price, or you get to sit in a special section? What amazing thing. They're bribing people to take this vaccine. I think if you were not suspicious before, you should be suspicious now. And I don't know if this is a fact. I should have fact checked it, but someone showed me a little Twitter screenshot of a governor who they were going to offer each week $1 million raffle. And how you got into the raffle was to get your vaccine, get your COVID shot. And I think, when have we ever done this? This is so obviously something way off, just way off. And I don't know what off. I just know there's something real creepy going on all over the world. And we win. Everything's good for the child of God. No fret. But don't need to fret about it. But we have a great God. I want to tell you, I've got my book, Fight On. Sam Gipp put these stories together. And just to give you a quick thought of people of valor, people who tough it out, people who face struggles and keep going. And we love stories of heroes. We ought to. Right now, we love stories of victims. But let's just be honest. We need heroes. We need some people who stand up and make it work when it's hard and get the job done when it's difficult. And here's a story of Sergeant Dan Edwards. Now, this is World War I, so we're going way back. And he mentions no man's land. And if you're not familiar with World War I, it was not uncommon. There'd be a trench here, zigzag trench of one of the Allied forces, let's say, and there'd be rolled razor wire, 2 or 3 rolls of wire, and there'd be this open land, and it could be 50 yards or 20 yards. The distance is depending on where they are. And there'll be another ditch over here with razor wire, and that would be the enemy troops. And they literally could talk. They could yell at each other sometimes, depending on the circumstances. You've probably heard stories at Christmas. They'd holler and have a ceasefire. They'd meet in the no man's land. It doesn't belong to anybody. This is all these guys' land. This is these guys' land, and they're fighting. And you stick your head up too high from your trench, they're going to shoot a hole right through it, and then you lay there dead. Well, some of the stories I've read about World War I, they couldn't get the dead bodies out because the fire was too hot, too much enemy fire, and someone would lay there dead, or maybe they would be running from point A to point B out of the trench, get shot, lie there half in the trench, half out, not able to move them for fear of you getting shot. Just a horrible time. But when they talk about no man's land, that could be a 20-yard, 30-yard, 100-yard, whatever distance in there as these zigzag trenches, and there might be multiple trenches as troops move, and they would dig in. When you talk about digging in, that's getting in so you got a little berm of dirt to hide behind. You can pop up and shoot as long as you don't get shot in the process. Well, that's what this is talking about. And they did on occasion rush the other person here or there, but very, very dangerous. A lot of hand-to-hand, a lot of bayonets, and a lot different battling today. So Sergeant Dan Edwards was a machine gunner in the 1st Division Machine Gun Battalion. During World War I, he was charging across, so he's running across the no man's land, carrying his machine gun when he came on an empty trench. He stopped to lower himself into the trench when a 1-pound shell struck the machine gun slung over his shoulder, cartwheeling him through the air, sending him feet first into the trench, but he never touched bottom in the trench. So some of these trenches were deep enough to walk in and your head would barely show. Because he was suspended. His right arm was mangled, literally blown off, just held on by some skin, but it was stuck in some of the lattice work or the wire work, whatever it was, on the top of the trench. So he's hanging there just inches off the trench floor, but he couldn't get down. I mean, he was hanging for the moment. He could eventually get down, obviously, but his right arm was blown off, and his fingers were blown off the arm, and he's just hanging there. It says it's a gross story. If you don't want to hear a gross story, mute this until I lift my Bible up. But to me, this is the stuff that manliness and heroes are made of. Try as he could to get himself free, he was struggling. And then he sees down the trench. Remember this? He'd gone across no man's land. He's in the enemy trench, and he sees helmets because there's these. They wouldn't dig these trenches straight, or one machine gun could just go up and shoot everybody. So they zigzag these trenches. He sees, let's see where I lost my place, 8 helmets coming toward him, realizing they're coming right to where he is. Sergeant Edwards pulls out his .45, that's a pistol, so he uses his left hand, pulls his .45 out and aims where he thinks they'll appear. When the first one appeared, he dropped him with one shot, then another, and then finally he killed the first 4 quickly as they were running down the trench. To the 4 were there. The remaining 4 threw their hands in the air and surrendered. Well, he was there hanging from the trench wall, bleeding heavily. 4 enemy soldiers dead, 4 enemy soldiers with their guns on the ground and their hands in the air. Edwards, he didn't know what to do. So he had the enemy soldiers back up a little bit, holding his pistol on him. He set his pistol right there where he could grab it and fire at them if they tried to move. He finished cutting the skin off his arm, dropped into the trench, put on a tourniquet to the shattered arm, and picked up his weapon in his left hand and marched the enemy troops back to where he came from as his prisoners. That's a tough story. That's tough men. And that is hero. That's fighting on. That's the theme of this book. Just fight on. When things go wrong, you just fight on. When there's disease, fight on. And we're not a nation of quitters. At least we haven't been until now. And now we're a nation. We're raising a nation of people who need safe space and kitty blankets, and we need to be pampered and pacifiers in our mouths. But man, we've got a great God, and He's worth standing for. And in our Baptist history and in conservative Bible-believing religious history, not just Baptist, but many Baptists, you'll find there's been a lot of people who just stood up. I read a story this last week of a young lady who, a teenager, and she had gotten saved. She was saved already, but she'd gotten baptized by immersion. She studied it out. She'd been hanging around these people and they were Baptists, and she just realized, I need to do this. So when she got baptized, she was in big trouble with the Protestant reformers, and they threatened her, and the different religious leaders argued with her, and she wouldn't give. And at one point, I can't remember if it was the Catholics or the Protestants. I can't tell you the for sure on that, but they brought her. They were going to burn her at the stake just over baptism, that she would not recant. And so there she is. And they're arguing with her, and what does she think she's doing, and what does she know, and they literally light the fire, and she says, "You want to see a miracle that proves God?" She said, the fire's lit around her. She's tied to a post. She says, "You want to know a miracle? I'll tell you a miracle that proves God is with me and taking care of me. I feel no pain. And she said, God has given me perfect peace. And she continued to witness and testify from the scriptures of what the Bible says about salvation, baptism, and loving God. While she said she felt no pain whatsoever. Well, that's incredible. And of course, it's the work of God. And we hear many stories like that where God just preserved people and let them do what they needed to do. And what a great story. I want to mention a couple things because we're in this world that, as always, that money matters so much. In Proverbs chapter 23, and I'm going to mention several verses, but especially right now in California, it's interesting. I was listening to a guy, and he was talking about the will of God, and he said, I've never seen anybody who let money determine the will of God who had a happily ever after at the end of their life. And he said, following money typically ends up in heartbreak. But Proverbs 23, verse 4 says, labor not to be rich. Cease from thine own wisdom. We ought not labor to be rich. Now, we should labor. We should work hard. We should do our best. Obviously, that's all scriptural. But labor not to be rich. See, in our world, we've all got different ideas about money. And to be honest, until you come right down to the final details and someone having to examine, we don't know always how much money means to us, what we will or won't do for money. But the Bible does teach about it. And there are some things that some people, money's their security. They have no peace of heart and mind unless there's a good chunk of money in the bank or investments or whatever, retirements, pensions. But the Bible says over in 1 Timothy chapter 6, Paul's writing to Timothy, and he's telling him how to pastor. And he says to Timothy, I want you to warn them that are rich in this world. Warn them, 1 Timothy chapter 6. But over in chapter 6, verse 17, charge them that are rich in this world, that they be not high-minded, nor trust in uncertain riches, but in the living God who giveth us richly all things to enjoy. He said, you charge them, you preach at them, and you charge them that are rich. So there were Christians, there were people in these churches who were, in using the term that God used, they were rich. And it's not a sin to be rich. It's a sin to trust money, a sin to love money, sin to be motivated by money. But he said, you charge them that they will not trust in uncertain riches, but in the living God. Our trust, our hope, the thing we rely on. If I made all my decisions on the basis of money, I would certainly pack up and sell right now and leave California. We're in a day when take your equity and run, but it did ever occur to us that maybe God wants us where the economy is high? Did it ever occur to us that perhaps God has a plan? If I were to take my equity and run, I'd tithe on it before I left town. Years ago, one of our men called me up and knew our family in our church, and I sat down in the living room, good family, and he said, I have a question. I said, what do you need? And he said, well, I lived for many years in another city and went to a good church there and sold my house and moved up here and bought this house. And he said, now my question is this, the equity that I gained while I lived in that house, so I've gained money in my house, and I walked away with more than I put into the house. He said, where do I tithe on that? And at my old church, or where I am now, and I've told this story before. I said, the equity you gained was while you were attending the other church. I said, why don't you send it back there? Now I had no idea how much money, $2, $2,000, $200,000, but the point being, I would always rather be on the giving side than the taking side. I just think it's safe to prefer others. I think that's a safe way to go. And everybody could be different on that however they want. But I think, well, there's some folks selling their homes here and moving out. I hope that they heard me tell that story. But if not, I hope they're generous with their prosperity where they go. That God would guide and direct, that He would be glorified. The money is not the thing. Tight gripping hands on dollar bills never made anybody happy. Open hands of generosity, that's what brings peace. And whether people give in one place or another, that's up to them. But may we be generous. May we not love. He says there in 1 Timothy 6:17, charge them that are rich in this world that they Be not high-minded. We're no better than anybody else if we have some money, nor trust in uncertain riches, but in the living God that giveth us richly all things to enjoy. Now, he does give us these things to enjoy, the last line in verse 17 says. So nothing wrong with enjoying what God's given you. And if God's given you some extra and you get to have a vacation or you get to have a toy or two, boy, enjoy it. But don't trust in it. Don't think that's important. Don't let our toys get us out of church. I'm sad for the families that get cabins or beach property, or they get RVs, or they get their motor homes or whatever, and then they spend, or their horses and motorcycles or whatever, and they spend their Saturdays and Sundays out with their toys, ignoring the house of God, when the God of the house of God is the one who gave us those toys. We've got to be so very careful. Look back to Deuteronomy with me, Deuteronomy chapter 8, and that's the 5th book of your Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. You see, financial prosperity is a tool. It's like you've used any number of things to hammer a little nail in a wall. Well, ideally, you get a hammer. But you've used whatever you could find. Your people talk about using a shoe, the sole of a shoe or whatever. But they're just tools. And whether you use a ball peen hammer or a framing hammer or a sledgehammer or the bottom of a tin cup that's in your cupboard, the goal is to get the nail in the drywall or a nail in the wall to hang the picture or whatever. And money is just a tool. And it's a resource, and it's just something to use to do the will of God. And how careful we need to be that we don't love the wrench or the hammer. The tool's not supposed to be loved. It's what the tool helps that we love. It's the people that we love. It's the ministry. It's the missionary that we can love. It's the Sunday school we can love. It's the children. It's not even about the bus that you might buy for your church. It's about the children who ride the bus. And so it's not about the money. It's not about the gift. It's about the people who are helped by the gift. And again, the big mistake most people say Solomon made is he loved things and used people when he should have loved people and used things. A big difference there. But Deuteronomy chapter 8, if you look down at verse 18, it says, "But thou shalt remember the Lord thy God, for it is he that giveth thee power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant which he sware unto thy fathers, as it is this day." It's God in Deuteronomy 8:18. It's God that gives us power to get wealth. And whatever good things you and I have, we got them from God. And let's mark this thing down. No matter how rich or poor we are, any good we have came from God. James 1:17, all the way back by Revelation, James 1:17, "Every good gift and every perfect gift cometh down from above, from the Father of lights, with whom is no variableness, neither shadow of turning." God is the one who gave us these things. And so we need to honor God with those things. We don't want to forsake God. And I tell you, your business is prospering. It's easy to have that business get so prosperous, you get too busy for God, and you forget that it's God who gave you the business. It's God who prospered the business. It's God who is working in that business to keep it up. Don't forsake God. Don't miss reading your Bible. Don't miss going to church. Just decide you're going to do it. I remember the story of Russell Anderson. If you hope you'll pray for him. He's not well at all. He may be near heaven. He might be. I haven't heard for a few days. He could be in heaven today. But Russell Anderson had apartments he owned and rented, and rental property, and he had a drywall business. And he said, Wednesday night, we got off work in time to get to church. And we might just barely get there for church, but we weren't missing Wednesday night Bible study. He said Thursday, we'd work, but we'd always get off work in time to get back to church. So Thursday night, he said, I wasn't going to miss soul winning. And he wasn't going to miss church on Sunday. Now, that's how he ran his life. Didn't hurt him a bit. He became very prosperous, and he became prosperous because God chose to bless him. And again, God doesn't choose to give all of us a bunch of wealth, but we want to honor God, not our money. It's not your bank account or my car or house that makes us of any value. It's who we help. It's who we invest in. Proverbs chapter 3, if you want to look there, we started out in Proverbs, but Proverbs chapter 3, a pretty famous verse, and you probably know it by heart. but I'll look at it because I want to make sure I say it right. But in Proverbs chapter 3 and verse 9, it says, honor the Lord with thy substance. So whatever my substance is, I'm to honor God. And with the first fruits of all thine increase. So whatever I possess, I'm to honor God with. And then whatever increase that comes, and it might be I'm a shepherd and I have sheep that are increased, might be I'm a corn farmer and my crops do great this year, my increase. It could be I put money in the stock market, bought bitcoins or whatever. I have no idea what Bitcoin, I do sort of know, but you invested in this and you put in $100 and now it's worth $1,000. Well, that $900, we need to honor God with that, with the first fruits. The word first fruits is where we get our word tithe. And to honor God with the first fruits. And so we ought to be so very careful that we honor God with our stuff. And I've talked about it before, but I want to just encourage you, guard your estate, that as you get older, it doesn't cause strife with your children or your relatives. Have things clearly in order. Have an executor. Have somebody that's going to take care of it. I think it's smart to let your whole family know what you're doing ahead of time. Tell them, I just want you to know this, this, and this. And if they want to get mad, let them get mad while you're alive. Don't leave your kids or your siblings hating each other over stuff. People are what matter, not stuff. And stuff's not going to make you happy, but good relationships will. But do your best. And again, one of our friends, he puts together estates and living trusts. That's what he does for a living. He said, I thought I had spent my life helping people. And he said, when my mother died, suddenly someone else in the family got an attorney involved who was corrupt and began protesting or fighting the trust that the mom had set up, how she wanted it. And he said, I thought I had protected our family from all this. He said, I found out no matter how hard you try, there's always some lying, corrupt person who's willing to try and get some money out of something. I think, man, money doesn't make people happy. Don't covet. The word covet is in the Bible over, and covet and covetous and covetousness. And it's always in a negative, all but maybe one time in the Bible, a negative slant. Because covetousness and greed and envy and the lust for things, it ruins people. It ruins marriages. It ruins children. It ruins, you can't raise good children with a covetous heart. You're going to ruin your kids. It'll mess them up. And the love for things. Proverbs says the love of money is the root of all evil. Or Timothy, the love of money is the root of all evil, which some coveted after have erred from the faith. We ought to be careful. And if you're fighting, if you're willing to cross a line of right and wrong in order to get some gain, I promise you it will cost you more than you ever get. Don't compromise right for money, and don't compromise right for a friend or for a promotion at work. Let's not do that. The money is just a tool. It's just a tool to be a help to others, to provide for my family. And I look, of course, I'm older now. My kids are raised, but I look at a house and I think a big house versus a small house is only more utility bills, more maintenance, and somebody's got to clean that big old thing. And a smaller house is, you'll meet a lot of people as they get older, they downsize their house. And it's not just about money, it's about good sense. It doesn't matter. As you get older, you realize how shallow money is. You realize how important relationships are. Don't lose a friend. Don't do things that break friendships. Be guarded that money doesn't move you, but rather relationships to your family members, your parents, your children, your siblings, to the people of God. If somebody gave me $10 million to pack up and move somewhere, and I didn't think I was in the will of God, I wouldn't do it for anything. I'm in the will of God. I've got great friends. I'm near my children, at least some of my children. And what a great God. What is money going to do? It sure won't buy happiness. We all know that. And so I want to encourage you, let's labor not to be rich. Let's use our resources. And of course, right now, some people are saying, well, it's sure helpful. No, the end of that verse is labor not to be rich, cease from your own wisdom. Stop it. You don't know what you're talking about. Listen to the word of God. But let's, if God gives you money, wonderful. Enjoy it. Have it be a pleasant thing to your family, but don't let it motivate you. Don't let it move you. Don't change the schools your children go to. Don't change the church you go to. Wherever you're growing as a Christian, grow. Don't let money bother you. This love of money will destroy you, and covetousness will destroy you, and the simple things of life, a meal together, walking hand in hand with a child, a grandchild, your spouse, those things can't be replaced. Let's keep the priorities right. It's God, the great commandment to love God. Second commandment to love your neighbors yourself, and to love money. That is a commandment to not do that one. So, let's be very careful. Let's be guarded and pray for your country, because we're messed up, especially in the area of money. Have a great day. Thanks for taking a few minutes here, and see you tomorrow morning, Lord willing.